Hey, what's up, randos? Welcome into the podcast. I am Ed at Random, and I am by my lonesome, hence why you have a very nice direct view of me. Again, if you're not watching us, I highly recommend you hop on fandomatrandom.com, click the watch button, and you can follow, like, subscribe. Make sure you click the little bell on YouTube if you want to see us, in person. Get a little bit more personable up in this space, but as always, you can hit the listen button. You can follow us on all the major podcast sites. We're everywhere. We're everywhere at this point, but I am all by my lonesome this week. It is very sad. Very, very sad, but we're going to have a good time together. I can feel it. I can feel it deep in my jellies. So, today, we are going to be doing a random review of Netflix's live-action Cowboy Bebop. For those of you who have been listening to this podcast for a while, you know I am a big fan of anime, manga, all things Japan-related, and I'm an otaku. I am, no shame, weeb alert. But I loved the shit out of the original Cowboy Bebop anime, and I was stoked to hear, I was cautiously optimistic when I heard they were making a live-action, I don't want to say a remake, but a live-action adaption of the original anime, and I've got a lot to say about it. Somebody else who had a lot to say about it, I was supposed to have another guest on today, Andrew Gonzalez of 8-Bit Movie Review Podcast. Andrew and Josh, they've been on this podcast a couple times. We've been on theirs. I highly recommend you go check them out. Bunch of great content. They do a bunch of video game related reviews and movie reviews. Unfortunately, Andrew had something come up last minute. He could not make it on this cast. I know he was super bummed out. I was too, but Andrew, we'll get you back on a future cast because I know you want to talk more anime related content. But before we get into our random review of Cowboy Bebop, we do have to do a quick... Oh, look at this. This is where I rely on Brian to talk while I can find the drops. Quick little fandom
fatality.
So we did have a loss this week of Masayuki Yumura. He was the lead architect of the original Famicom, aka the Nintendo, the Nintendo Entertainment System, and also the Super Famicom, or in America, the SNES or Super Nintendo. So this guy was really he was like the guy that was behind designing the original Nintendo and Super Nintendo. So definitely a big loss. He passed away at the age of 78, but I mean, he was a pioneer. And if it wasn't for him and his works and what Nintendo did, we may not have gotten the home consoles that we now have and enjoy today. So big loss, kind of a bummer. And we are going to get into our random review now. So without further ado, let's do it.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
All right. How can you not start off with Tank, the original theme song from the original anime Cowboy Bebop? Let's talk about the original Cowboy Bebop for a minute. And I do want to mention, if you have not seen the original Cowboy Bebop anime, stop listening. Go hop on. I believe it is on Netflix. Go watch it. Go watch it. I highly, highly recommend. It is, I don't even think it's a question. If you're talking the anime community, it goes down as one of the most iconic and most influential anime to ever be released. It's in my top 10. I don't know where I would quite put it, but it's absolutely in my top 10. I know a lot of other people would agree with me, but the style, everything. And it also had a terrific American dub with Steve Blum doing the voice of the iconic Spike Spiegel, the main protagonist. Did a great job with that, but the anime was just, mwah, chef's kiss. It was fantastic. So, moving from the anime into this live adaptation. So, Netflix optioned this a while back, and we heard them talking that they may be doing this. So, and there's going to be spoilers I want to mention as well. I'm not really going to get into anime spoilers too much. It's going to be a little bit of a crossover, but mainly spoilers about this live action remake. So Netflix, they optioned this, and immediately any anime or manga fan out there, we've seen the live adaptions that have come out, and they're generally not that good. If you're looking back, I mean, there's been some. There was a Full Metal one. There's been multiple that have not been that good. I mean, one of the better ones was the actual Japanese versions of the Death Note. It was a 2-part series, not the Americanized bastardization live action movie. That shit sucked. But there's been few and far between successful live action anime adaptions, and I don't want to spoil too much or my feelings about this, but they're going to come out as I kind of explain this. But unfortunately, I think this kind of fell into the fold of not being a great adaptation for many reasons, unfortunately. So before I even, get into the review, this just broke a couple days ago. The shit's already been canceled. So season 1 came out, and the original anime, I'd have to go back and look. I think it's around 32 episodes, but it's one run and it's done. It's fantastic. And I had a feeling when this live action adaptation came out, it was going to be one season, they'd be one and done. That wasn't the case. They were planning on doing a second season. And unfortunately, anime and manga fans, we are a very vocal fandom. And when something releases that we're not happy about, we make it known. And I think Netflix just got destroyed on the Twitterverse and everything else, with people just, the hardcore fans just saying, hey, this was not what we wanted. And don't get me wrong, there were some people that enjoyed it. Absolutely. But the vocal, whether it was the minority or the majority, they definitely had something to do with the show getting canceled. And then obviously the streaming numbers must not have been there either. And I'm curious if this is going to affect other future live action anime properties, because there's shit pending. And I'll talk about that at the end of this review. Another kind of quick fun fandom fact, Keanu Reeves was actually billed to play Spike Spiegel in a live action Cowboy Bebop movie that Fox was going to do years ago. And that would have been something to see. I love Keanu Reeves. Could he have pulled off a good Spike Spiegel? I don't know, maybe. I love the guy, but that ended up not coming to pass due to scheduling conflicts, so never happened. Instead, we got this show for a live action. So let's start off with some of the things I like. So the music. The music, again, thumbs up. You can't F the music up when you stick with what you got from the original, which was the original composer, which was Yoko Kanno. The music is an integral part of this show. I mean, the music just bleeds, just jazz, blues, just smooth, awesome, cool vibe music. And, the original anime had that so much. Those just awesome, trumpet, sax, bass lines, great percussion, and this live action had a good amount of that too. They threw in a couple questionable things, like some more modern stuff that I was kind of like, I don't know. But for the most part, it got it right. And again, they brought back Yoko Kanno to bring in some of that OG music feel, which was a good choice, because we got that again. Tank, the opening song, I don't even think it's a question. It is one of the most iconic opening songs and openings in general in anime history. It is fantastic, and they kept a lot of that in this live action. They did their own rendition. The first 20 seconds of the snippet are pretty damn, almost shot for shot what the original opening is in the anime. After that, it kind of changes up a little bit, but this live action adaptation kind of did the same, where episode 1, I thought it was going to follow the OG anime a lot more. and it deviated big time towards the end. We're going to talk about that. Let's talk about the aesthetics. So, how did the show look? For the most part, I thought it looked actually pretty good. The costume design was it was straight out of the anime. You could tell that. Don't get me wrong, the people that made this show, they generally, I could tell, they did care about the source material in certain regards, especially the look. I thought, everything, the Bebop looked good. A lot of the locations they went to looked good. Overall, I thought the CGI was actually pretty damn good. I had no issues with that. Costume design, it looked good overall, but it did kind of scream like cosplayer with too much money. So, it was kind of like a high-end cosplay. The biggest costume change was Faye Valentine, which, if you go back to the original anime and you look at Faye's design, it was a lot more risque, a lot more skin showing, whereas this rendition, not so much. They did end up changing that up a little bit. They covered up a bit more. They did say they wanted to not really desexualize the character, but more so kind of let the character's actions and backstory speak for itself and not detract from... I don't know. They kind of contradict themselves in an episode in this, which I'll talk about soon. So let's talk about the tone, the overall tone of this. And one sec, I'm going to Google something real quick before I forget because I want to talk about it. Where is it? Here we go, right here. So, the overall tone of this show, when you do a live action anime adaptation, there is an innate problem. And that problem is the overall tone of the adaptation. You can go one of two ways, and I feel like there's no in between. You can either go over the top, you can embrace the wackiness and the campiness of most anime, or you can stick to a more serious adaptation, which this unfortunately tried to do both, and I think it was the poorer for that. They should have gone in one camp or the other. Way too many times they tried to get way too serious and kind of dark, and then they would go back to just a very blatantly goofy anime-esque moment, and it did not translate well to live action. Whereas I feel like if they stuck with one or the other, and again, maybe that was part of the writing or the pacing, but maybe that could have been fixed a bit more. But overall, the tone just felt off, felt a little bit off. And the plot was a mess. They already had a great plot written. If you go back to the original anime, and I know, again, there's going to be two different ways to look at this, perceive this, view it, and review it at the end. There's going to be people that have not seen the original source material, the anime, that have watched this, and there's going to be people that have seen the original and then watched this and have different opinions on what they think it should have been or what they wanted it to be versus what we got. And I almost kind of harken back to a couple episodes that Brian and I did on Dune. So Brian and I mentioned that we knew nothing about the Dune fandom. We had not read the original books. We hadn't seen any of the original series or content. We went into Dune cold and we loved it. And I talked to a couple of my buddies that knew Dune very well, and they were much more critical of it than myself. And now it's kind of like, I feel like the script is flipped, and now that's me looking at this rendition. I can't help but be overcritical when I look at the plot, because I feel like the plot was already there, and they deviated a lot. For the main issue I had with it, they spent way too much goddamn time on the storyline with the Syndicate, with Vicious, Spike, and Julia, and the Triad. All of that shit going on. Like, if you go back to the original anime, that shit's that's barely in it. That's way towards the end before they get into the Red Dragon Syndicate shit. And I think it worked so much better that way in the anime, because Spike was a lot more aloof, and it was mysterious. You really didn't know what was going on with his past. They hinted at it, and we kept getting kind of little bits and pieces, but for the most part, like, Julia, Vicious, they were these mysterious characters we didn't know much about, and we didn't get to find out much about up until towards the end of the anime. And I think that air of mystery really benefited the original anime, whereas this, they shoved it down our throats right from the beginning. We got to see Vicious episode 1. We get to see Julia really, really early, and those characters, I mean, they had as much, if not more, screen time than the rest of the Bebop crew, which was a huge issue with me. This show is about it's supposed to be about the exploits of these characters on the Bebop trying to cohabitat and deal with their effed up pasts and kind of become like a makeshift weird family. And we didn't get any of that, or we got very little of it in this live action adaptation. So I had an issue with that. Way, way, way too much of the Syndicate. So we're going to delve into the characters here. So, the characters. We got to kick it off with Spike Spiegel, played by John Cho, a.k.a. Fearless. What the hell was up with that? What the hell was up with the Fearless nickname? It was so stupid. I don't know. I didn't get it. They don't call him that in the original anime. I don't know why they thought they had to give him some weird nickname in this rendition. Definitely odd, but Spike Spiegel is such a great protagonist with a troubled past and a super badass. And don't get me wrong, I love John Cho. I think he's a great actor. I thought he was, harkening all the way back to Harold and Kumar, going into, Star Wars. He's been great. Everything he's been in, he's been great. But he had massive shoes to fill playing this role. And I think unfortunately, they missed the mark. I don't think it was necessarily too much of his acting. It could have been more the directing and the writing, but he came off a little bit too serious. He didn't have that, I don't know, Spike, he's supposed to have these like moments of like self-reflection, looking back, with his relationship with Vicious and Julia, all that other shit. And in this live action, he just came off much more as just like depressed, troubled the entire time. Whereas in the original anime, he's a lot more goofy and like just like loose. Like everything kind of just rolls off his back. And that's how he kind of lives his life on the Bebop. He even says like he died once, he's living his second life. And I didn't really get that feel from John Cho as Spike Spiegel in this. I thought he was way too troubled from the get-go. Way too just heartsick for Julia. And I think a lot of that was also a byproduct of us getting the Vicious and Julia storylines early on and seeing those, and then maybe trying to over-empathize with what Spike was going through from an early point. I don't know. Whatever it was, it didn't work. He did an okay job. It was okay. It just wasn't, it didn't scream Spike Spiegel to me. Now, to flip the script, Jet Black, played by Mustafa Shakir, I thought he was awesome. I really thought he was great. He was by far, I thought he captured the overall spirit of the original Jet Black from the original anime much better than anyone else did with their characters in this rendition. I wasn't crazy about the whole like daughter storyline and bringing that into the plot. I didn't think they needed it. Maybe it was in an effort to kind of humanize Jet a little bit more. It wasn't a deal breaker, but I think they could have done without it. But I did love the noir episode they did back when he goes back to his roots with being a cop, trying to solve that old case where he was framed. I thought that was pretty cool. They did that in the original anime as well. And I just thought he was good. The mannerisms, the voice, everything. I thought he really encapsulated the character pretty damn well. So I think, Mustafa Shakir, good job. Thought you were a good Jet Black. Daniela Pineda as Faye Valentine, and oh Faye, what have they done to you? I think Daniela Pineda tried to do her best with this role. I think she kind of took what she was given, but it just was not Faye. I go back to the original, and Faye's character and personality are a lot more nuanced. I like that how in the original she's much more of a kind of like mysterious femme fatale. She has the troubled past, but even when she gets into situations, she can play herself off as like very cool, calm, collected, manipulate people. This version of Faye was much more just the screaming, like just the vulgar obscenities, like, F this, whatever, like every 2 seconds, like with everything. And it was almost more like a comic relief type of character. They tried to, towards the end, humanize her a lot more. They went into her backstory a little bit, but not as much as I would have wanted, and not really in a way I would have wanted. But yeah, she just didn't hit for me. Did not hit for me, and I don't know. I was not feeling Faye Valentine in this. All right, now we got Elena Satine as Julia. So as much as I wasn't crazy about Faye's character, I could accept it, wasn't crazy about it. I absolutely hated what they did with Julia in this. They tried to flesh the character out way too goddamn much, gave her way too much screen time, gave her a weird backstory. They ended up making her a makeup artist that pretty much does up the talent that works at the nightclub, and who then in turn becomes a singer and then sings at the nightclub, and that's how Spike and Vicious meet her, fall in love, blah, blah, blah. In the original anime, she's badass. She actually works for the Syndicate. She's like a stone cold killer. Like, she's badass. And again, like Vicious, they make her a lot more mysterious. You don't get to see too much about her up until the end. And, I mean, I'll put it this way. We got a lot of this character throughout, and she was mainly portrayed as a victim. Almost in the entirety of this rendition. She was under Vicious's thumb. She tried to go behind his back, get him killed. That ended up blowing up in her face. He ends up trying to kill her in the end. She gets away. And the finale. The goddamn finale. I mean, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but the character choices she made in the finale and what they did to her character in the finale is unforgivable in my mind. It was bullshit. All right, let's talk about our... This sucks because I hated what they did to this character too. Alex Hassel is Vicious, and I'll give it to Alex Hassel. I think the guy's a pretty good actor. Dude, my God. What did they do to Vicious? Vicious is supposed to be, again, like Julia. You don't know that much about him. You don't get to see that much about him until towards the end of the anime, and they hype the shit up out of him, that he's just this ruthless, badass killer. Dude, this Vicious, man, he looked like Iggy Pop. Like, he's got the shirt popped off with, like, the hair, and, dude, I mean, he's supposed to be sadistic and just badass, and, dude, he came off as extremely weak, both emotionally and physically, throughout. He was just like a little bitch, honestly. And they should have used him so sparingly up until the finale to build up that final duel with him and Spike. And we got so much of him throughout, just being a little bitch. Even the scene where you think this character is supposed to kind of redeem himself when he goes in front of the Triad and he ends up like tricking them, taking them all out. And it didn't seem that impressive I don't know. I understand he kills him with a sword, yay, whatever, but he still just came off as a little whiny bitch. I did not like it at all. Vicious is supposed to be vicious. I mean, it's in the name. So, was not a fan of him. You know who I was a fan of, though? Ein, man. Let's give a round of applause here to yeah. So, Welsh Corgi dog actors Charlie and Harry, they played Ein. So, Charlie and Harry, you did a terrific job. 2 paws up. Obviously, Ein, you grab a Welsh Corgi, it's going to look like Ein in live action. They did a great job with that. What they didn't do a great job with was explaining why can Ein all of a sudden project like projector images out of his eyes like he's a robot. He's supposed to be a data dog. He's supposed to be a experimented on highly super intelligent being, you know, pretty much trapped in a dog form. Instead, they made him out to be like a little like a robot dog, and I didn't get that. Didn't get that at all. So don't know. But let's get to the last, what I would consider main character, even though we only got to see this character for all of 1 minute. And this was a character that people were, when the original trailers came out, all of the Cowboy Bebop fans kept asking one thing. Where is Ed? Not me. I'm talking Radical Edward, the hacker supreme. She is awesome. I mean, in the original anime, I love Radical Edward's character. She's goofy, over-the-top hacker, and this harkens back to the tone and the problem of trying to adapt live action, or trying to adapt anime into live action, where you have to go either all in with it or you have to go real, you know. And they went from a very depressing, in my opinion, shitty rendition of a finale, where Spike, you know, he's on his lonesome, he's beaten up, he's been shot, he's like in an alleyway, got his ass kicked. He hasn't. No one even gives a shit about him anymore. And who shows up? Spike Spiegel. It's Edward, Radical Edward. Holy shit! Netflix, what are you doing? What are you doing? It looked so bad, and the tone was just completely off. The Spike Spiegel. It was like, honestly, like I mentioned, like that season 2 was canceled. That may have been the nail in the coffin. Like if they at least hung out the carrot that Edward was showing up and didn't actually show her, it was just so bad. It was really bad. She looked I understand she was trying to go for the goofiness and the weird hyperactive shit that it hits in the anime. It does not hit in live action. It was bad. It was not a good way to do it, and it as bad as the finale soured me. That was like the final straw for me. I was like, boom. My review of this up until the final episode was going to be, I was going to try to keep an open mind and keep it somewhat average. After the finale, you'll have to wait and see what I review this, but it got swayed significantly after that moment. And then we had a couple recurring characters. Tamara Tooney as Anna, who ran the jazz club. I had no problem with her character. It was fine. One character, though, I did have a huge issue with, was Gren. And for those of you who have seen the original anime, Gren in this was played by Mason Alexander Park, who works for Anna at this club as pretty much a, I guess, like quasi talent agent, bouncer / bartender. I don't know what they were portraying Gren to be, but it wasn't what Gren was in the original anime. Gren was like badass in the original anime. He had a great backstory. He was a soldier in the war with Vicious until Vicious effed him over which they didn't even get into in this, which would have been great for the character, I think, with a little bit more backstory about why he hates the Syndicate. And, I mean, never mind, they didn't get into any of the shit with all, like, the experimentation, the substance abuse issues that Gren had to go through getting locked away when he was framed, that impacting his body with all, like, the female hormones that ended up effing him up. Some of my favorite episodes in the original anime were with Gren and just him, like, just hammering that saxophone. The music was great, but yeah, they was not a fan at all what they did with this character. They could have done so much more with Gren, and I think they were hinting that they were going to do more if we got a season 2, but lo and behold, after that finale, you ain't getting a season 2. You get one shot. Do not miss your chance to blow. Mom Spaghetti. All right. I do want to mention, too, we also got John Noble, who played Caliban, who was one of the 3 elders in the Red Dragon Syndicate. He ended up playing Vicious's dad, and I love John Noble. He's a great actor. All right. So I'm not really going to go episode by episode. I think I did a pretty good job of kind of briefly explaining what went on in this, but a couple things are really the thing that, let's just jump to the finale, because that's what's going to be fresh in everyone's minds if you've watched this. They effed the finale up so fucking badly. The whole thing is supposed to be Spike going on a... So, go reverse a little bit. In the anime, Spike ends up finding out that Julia is still alive, waiting for him. He ends up meeting up with her again. They plan on running away together. Vicious intervenes, ends up killing Julia. And this sets Spike off on a goddamn warpath. He becomes a one-man goddamn army, and he goes straight after Vicious, and he just lays waste to all of Vicious's dudes until we get the badass final fight between Spike and Vicious. And they do that, they do it right in the... Oh, they teased us so goddamn much, Netflix. I hate you. Because we got the iconic scene of Vicious leaning down over Spike with his sword, Spike leaning up with his gun right in front of the that mosaic glass in the church. And everybody assumed, okay, we're going to get that badass scene. And it sucked, man. It really sucked. It was slow. The action in that whole fight scene was not good. Everything leading up to that sucked. And then the big plot twist. Julia shows up, shoots Vicious, has a heart-to-heart with Spike, and pretty much says, Spike, hey, we're going to kill Vicious, and we're going to take over the Syndicate together. And Spike's like, what? Spike explains, he's like, he's not that guy anymore. She ends up shooting Spike. He ends up smashing out of the window, and then she takes Vicious as a hostage, pretty much as her little pet, chains him away. And apparently every day she's going to play Russian roulette, go down there, try to shoot him, while she's kind of running the Syndicate behind the scenes. And Spike has to... It was so stupid. It made zero sense why Julia's character would all of a sudden just change and do all that. It was dumb. It was dumb writing. They already had a terrific ending. And one of my favorite parts of the original anime ending is the fact they keep it so ambiguous whether Spike lives or dies. We get to see him take out Vicious. He comes out. You've got all of the, I believe it's police at that point, and Spike is he looks mortally wounded. He literally lifts his finger just as a gun and just bang. And then you just see him start falling and it cuts to black. So they leave it open to interpretation whether he lives or dies. In this, we find out that Spike is alive and well, even though we got freaking shot multiple times and Julia shot him, and yet he's still ticking. And now Radical Edward wants him to go claim a bounty. And it makes no sense. Spike's whole reason for even living after what Vicious did to him, he was living for Julia. And, in the original, when Julia dies, he has nothing to live for. That's when he goes on his suicide mission. In this one, Julia shoots him, breaks it off, and yet now he's just going to keep on going, bounty hunting away with Radical Edward. I hated it. Absolutely hated it. So before I get into my random review score, and I'm really curious, it sucks. Andrew, I wish you could have been on. Just based on some of the comments you made, I think you would have been a bit more of a optimistic or a bit more of a lighter take than I am, because I've just been bashing this, and don't get me wrong, there was some good. There was some good in this. It was just overshadowed by the bad. And I'm really curious now that Netflix pulled the plug on this. Is this going to kill other live-action anime adaptations in the future? We know we're getting a One Piece live-action adaptation. They've already cast that. They've released a couple kind of teaser images. That is one that I mention Tone all the time. If they do not, they have to fully embrace the goofiness, the wackiness, and the campiness. Like that shit, like if people had issues with Cowboy Bebop and some of like the anime-ness coming in and being wacky, dude, One Piece is a whole other goddamn animal when you got people using devil fruit powers and shit. I have no idea. There's a talking reindeer. There's a goddamn talking reindeer. How are they going to do that in live action and not make it seem ridiculous? I don't know. Maybe Netflix will prove me wrong after seeing this. I don't think so. I hope they do. And we're also getting that Avatar: The Last Airbender. I know technically not anime, but I don't know. To me it is. We're getting that live action. We'll have to see how they do with that. But I remain hopeful that one day we will get a fantastic anime adaptation that will live up to Dragon Ball Evolution. It's just the best. Absolute best. Random review score time. So I will, Andrew, again, if you're listening, after I post this live, post on our socials. Let us know what you would have reviewed this in comparison to me, because I'm very curious what you thought about this. So if I had never seen Cowboy Bebop, if I had never seen it, wipe my memory clean, I would probably give this, honestly, I'd probably be sitting around like a 7.5 out of 10. 7 out of 10, 7.5 out of 10. I have a couple friends that have watched this now that have not seen the original anime that said, actually, I thought it was pretty good. And I can see it. I can see that. It had some goodness to it. That being said, knowing the original source material, the anime, I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. I'm not going to completely bury it. Like I said, there was some good in there, but the finale, the way they handled some of the characters, it was just, they effed up way too many things trying to cross the finish line in the end. And yeah, it just didn't do it for me, unfortunately. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. So again, do I recommend you watch this if you've seen the anime? No, you can skip it. If you haven't seen it, if you haven't seen the original anime, you're looking for something to watch, there's better stuff out there. Like I had somebody ask me, should I check this out? I said, no, go check out Arcane, the League of Legends animated show on Netflix right now. That shit is worth watching, and we'll be reviewing that very soon. But that's all I got. So without further ado, this has been Fandom at Random. I am Ed. Brian will be back next week. Andrew, sorry we missed you, buddy. Let us know what your review scores would be. Very curious. Again, check us out, fandomatrandom.com. All the ways to follow, like, watch, listen. We greatly appreciate the support, randos. We'll be back. Ton of shit. We got Christmas episode coming up. End of the year. The Fandies is going to be great. All right, until next time. See you, Space Cowboy. Later.